Companies are setting their sights on Mars with ambitious rocket designs and mission timelines. But is it possible to get there if we haven't been to the moon in about 50 years? SpaceX's giant Starship rocket is Elon Musk's plan to send humans to Mars, and his ambitions include sending about 100 people aboard the spaceship for the long journey and eventually establishing a self-sustaining colony on the planet. But on Tuesday, a fireball erupted from an engine test of the small prototype of the rocket dubbed Starhopper. Yet NASA's plans to reach Mars start a little bit closer to home. Business Insider's Dave Mosher breaks down why it might be better to go back to the moon before we set our sights on the red planet. This is Business Insider Today.
President Donald Trump really wants NASA to send astronauts to Mars, and tech mogul Elon Musk is similarly obsessed with launching people there using his rocket company, SpaceX. But NASA is working hard to return people to the moon first, and SpaceX will almost certainly have to reach the lunar surface before anybody puts her boot in red dirt. That's not to say engineers don't have plans to reach Mars directly. It's just that it's way more dangerous. Developing rockets and spaceships is hard enough. In April, for example, just months before SpaceX hoped to launch its first astronauts for NASA, the company's private spaceship exploded during a ground test. The cause? A poorly chosen valve for a launch abort system, creating all the other stuff required to live on Mars, even if temporarily, and have all of it work flawlessly is another matter entirely. On the moon, astronauts would be about 239,000 miles, or a 3-day trip from Earth, and their communications would be almost instantaneous. Meanwhile, Mars is about 140 million miles away, and messages can take more than 10 minutes to reach Earth. What's more, there's only a short window of time, once every 2 years, to return home, and the ride back could last anywhere from 6 to 9 months. That's why NASA is determined to get back to the moon on the cusp of the moon landing's 50th anniversary. The agency wants practice building and operating a base on a world nearby before trying for Mars, because they don't want that historic adventure to also be a veritable suicide mission. NASA's current goal is to launch a spaceship and land at least 2 people on the moon's surface in 2024. As soon as the mid-2020s, though, Musk wants to send people to Mars. But if those passengers have any hope of surviving, they may want to see if SpaceX can safely send them to and from a place much closer to home first.
The fact that we haven't been to the moon since the 1970s isn't stopping companies from planning a return. The moon is home to quadrillions of dollars worth of resources that could mean big bucks for whoever figures out how to recover them. Our team investigates just how much the moon is worth.
Dennis Hope owns the moon. At least that's what he told the UN in a letter he wrote in 1980. He asked if they had any legal issue with that, and since they never responded, Hope's taken that to mean he's in the clear. And while the legality of his claim might be a little murky, the millions of dollars he's made selling it off piece by piece are not. Hope established the Lunar Embassy the same year he struck a claim to its namesake. Now, his son, Chris Lamar, has taken over, and he's been selling property on the moon at $24.99 a pop.
We keep the price very low because it is our intention for everyone to be able to afford an acre. Everyone should have an equity share in the celestial body. So, multiply $24.99 by the moon's total acreage, and we could say the moon's worth $234,499,867,468. Right now, the laws around owning lunar land are fuzzy, to say the least. The Outer Space Treaty was established by the UN at the height of the Cold War to keep things peaceful during the space race. It states that a celestial body, like the moon, or planets, or random asteroid, is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty, by means of use or occupation, or by any other means. Basically, the Soviet Union or the US can't just plant its flag up there and yell, "Get off my lawn!" to whoever shows up second. But Chris Lamar and his 6 million customers are not governments. They're individuals, so loophole? No. According to Stephen E. Doyle, a retired lawyer who served as NASA's Deputy Director of Internal Affairs. He told Popular Science, "You have a right to go up and take the lunar soil, but you don't have any right to draw a square on the surface of the moon and say, 'That square is mine.' You can't own plots of lunar land, no matter how nice the deed looks on your wall, but that could change soon. It might have to. If you could harvest all the helium-3 Popular Mechanics estimates is on the moon, it would be worth $25 quadrillion. That's $1 billion? 25
million times. President Obama signed the Space Act in 2015, giving private citizens the right to mine and sell celestial resources. But you still can't own land, which could make things difficult for private companies who want to cash in. There's an abundance of mineable materials on the moon. Water that can be broken down into oxygen for breathing, and hydrogen for rocket fuel, rare earth elements, and metals from crashed asteroids. In 2016, Moon Express was the first private U.S. company to get government approval to go to the moon. It hasn't made it yet, funding fell through, but eventually it wants to turn the satellite into a gas station in the sky, harvesting water to fuel missions deeper into space. Moon Express CEO Bob Richards likens industry on the moon to fishing in international waters. No one country can lay claim to the ocean, but the peaceful removal of fish is allowed. But what if extreme competition means things get less than peaceful? Moon Express isn't the only business trying to get up there. The European Space Agency and a company called Planetary Resources also have a commercial interest in space. So what if one stakes a claim to a water source and another wants at it? Nonprofits like the Space Settlement Institute are trying to change the law, or maybe more accurately, create a law. So they drafted the Space Settlement Prize Act, which introduces a claim to ownership of lunar land and a multi-billion-dollar incentive for private companies to build infrastructure on the moon. Its legitimacy is on par with the Lunar Embassy, but they believe private industry should lead the charge to colonize space by means of ownership and investment. The bill doesn't have legs yet, but the possibility of a space colony either on the moon or Mars is more than just sci-fi at this point, barring a space mountain of unknowns. For now, it's still too soon to start mooning over beachfront property on the Sea of Tranquility.
As part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, SpaceX and Boeing are locked in competition to see which will be the first company to bring astronauts to the International Space Station from American soil. But they're hardly the only companies getting involved in and making money from the space sector. Early-stage venture capital fund Space Angels has dubbed 2019 the year of commercial space travel, as nearly $3 billion has already been invested in space companies in just the first half of this year. We sat down with Space Angels CEO Chad Anderson to discuss how investors are looking at the industry. How many investment opportunities are there for investing in space?
So this is all very new. Before 2009, there wasn't a whole lot of entrepreneurial activity to speak of in space, and it was really the government and a handful of defense contractors. It was less of a market and more of a cartel, if you will, who set launch prices kind of tongue-in-cheek, and it was very, very expensive to get in. We've gone from a dozen privately funded space companies in 2009. There's now $22 billion have been invested in 476 companies over the last 10 years. So this market is, developing really quickly, and it's in line with a lot of the other new markets that we've seen in the past, where the barriers to entry come crashing down. The existing market is being disrupted and being reimagined.
Where will most of the money in space exploration come from in the future?
So it's all mostly come from the government, up until 10 years ago, right? So things are happening really quickly, but there is a lot of commercial money flowing in, not just on the investment side, but on the revenue side as well. In the existing markets, there's $350 to $400 billion a year in space economy today, in government spending and commercial revenue. That's in really, launch takes up a small piece of that, but most of it is in satellites. What we're really interested in looking at is starting to see where the government is putting their money and where commercial companies are starting to see opportunity and are getting involved in that. And those are the types of companies that we're looking at to invest in, because they will be the titans of the space industry.
Do you have a single favorite investment in your portfolio that you think has a lot of upside?
This is like talking about your kids, so no favorites. There are a few that are really timely, though, and interesting to talk about. And one is Astrobotic is out of Pittsburgh. They're developing landers to take robots to the moon, and also the robots that will be doing the exploration and early infrastructure work when they get there. I've been working with them for 6 years or so, and so it's really exciting to see what's happening now. So they've been signing up customers and getting prepayments from commercial customers, and they've been, and their pipeline is something like $1.5 billion right now. So there's a lot of pent-up demand for this.
And Virgin Galactic is going to go public soon. What do we think about that as an investment, since this is an investment that everybody can get into. It'll be publicly traded. And there's not, are there any other opportunities like that for people right now?
This is the first of its kind, especially for a human spaceflight company. This will be the first and only public human spaceflight company. So
will that limited supply, like we saw in marijuana, will that limited supply lead to like a lot of extra investors trying to access it?
certainly, I mean, there's a lot of excitement right now, and there's not a lot of options to get involved. I got to say that, I mean, all of the excitement that we're seeing in space over the last 10 years from SpaceX and others is really about increased access, I think. Space is, since the Apollo era, has captured our imagination, but it's always been this thing that's out there that we can't really participate in, right? It's off limits. It's only for the best of us, or the incumbents, the defense contractors, what have you. Rocket science, it's hard, don't even try it, right? Another tactic to keep new entrants out. There's a lot of new founders, a lot of new entrepreneurs that are now staking their claim and staking their space in space for the first time. Investors now, private investors, are participating in that. We've played a leading role, I think, in helping private investors get access to this new emerging market, lowering the barriers to entry for them, helping them to understand the real risks and opportunities to understand this market and identify the best investment opportunities. And it seems to me like this SPAC is another great step in terms of providing greater access to the public now to participate in this growth.
Would you go to outer space if you had a chance to?
That is a hard no.
Really?
No way.
I'm not surprised, though.
I need like 1 million people to go there and back safely before you get me anywhere near any of this.
And what about like the comforts? Like the food and the facilities?
No, it doesn't seem, I mean, it seems cool to watch and you'd like have a fun experience there maybe, but I feel like I can go to a no gravity place on planet Earth and then go to a real restaurant and eat real food.
Oh, you have no imagination. Join our Facebook group and help us keep the conversation going.
And we'll see you tomorrow for another episode of Business Insider Today.